So we're gonna talk about gooseneck kettles today. For all those people who don't know what a gooseneck kettle is, first of all, let's just understand what a kettle is. And let's understand what does a kettle has to do in a coffee brewing scenario. A kettle is required to first of all heat up the water and secondly to pour it. Now you can pour it through this also, and when we are talking about pouring, we're talking about the manual brews, say the Chemex, the pour overs, the aeropresses, and all these equipments. You can pour water with this also, alright. But why gooseneck kettles? Why do you want a proper spout? The gooseneck kettle, the way it is designed, it's very important for you to know that the water flows through a particular angle and it touches the coffee bed in such a manner that it does not create any sort of turbulence or any sort of disturbance on the coffee bed, which is really important for even an equal extraction. So we'll talk about that today, where it came from, why is it important, is it really important, is it something that you really require to win a championship or have your cafe or your brewing experience good. Let's talk about that. So kettles have been with humankind since as far as like the humankinds go, I guess. Japanese culture is very much invested in the kettles. If you see the kettles, if you see the way, the art of design, it's just phenomenal what they do. I myself have got like 3 kettles, by the way, which are like very old, not very old, but very expensive and very niche kind of a product. Coming to the gooseneck kettle that we're talking about in context of coffee. The gooseneck kettle somewhere or the other originated from the whistling kettle. So whistling kettles have been there for a very long period of time, after which there was an addition to it, which was the gooseneck or the spout towards it. When I say a spout or when I say a gooseneck, it's important for everybody to understand the difference between that. So spout is basically, it could be straight spout, it could be a spout from which water is just flowing from an angle, or however the water is flowing, as against a gooseneck kettle, which basically has got a particular angle. And also when it starts pouring, it has got, if you observe properly, the spot from which the water starts pouring outside, it has got a particular angle to it, a cut. So it is like this, an S sort of a thing, and then there's a slant cut. It's not a straight cut. The slant cut is for water to like just go in a particular direction. That's a very beautiful art and craft of how it has been made. You've got consistency of flow, you got the control in your hand while pouring the water on your coffee bed. Third is when you pour water and when the water is touching the coffee bed, there is a kind of agitation that is happening. That is also one variable in coffee. Now, if I use this glass and if I start pouring onto the coffee bed, the water is not going to be spread equally. At the same time, there's going to be a lot of turbulence in the coffee bed, by which the extraction is not going to be equal and even. Whereas when you start pouring it through the gooseneck kettle on the bed of the coffee, you'll see the water flowing in a very smooth manner rather than like big drops or gap between the water, gap between the drops. And once you start pouring the water and once it is smooth, there is even extraction and there is not much of agitation going around. So you can literally pour it properly. A very good example for you to understand this is while you're setting up your cupping table, if you use a gooseneck kettle to wet the grounds, then that is going to help you a lot in understanding what does a gooseneck kettle do to the bed of the coffee. Do you need a gooseneck kettle to make coffee? First of all, no, you don't need a gooseneck kettle to make coffee. Do you need a gooseneck kettle to make good coffee? Yes. Alright. So there's a big difference. Do you want to make coffee or do you want to make good coffee? Depending on what stage of a brewer you are at, you will require or you will not require a gooseneck kettle. My answer is honestly, each and every person who's at a level of brewing their own coffee over a period of time, they definitely need a gooseneck kettle. Alright. Anybody who is brewing for like over 6 months or 7 months, they definitely would start needing a gooseneck kettle, and it becomes a part and parcel of your brewing kit. Now, it is very beautiful, it's very aesthetic, but is it aesthetic more or functional more is kind of a topic that we want to discuss also. So it is super functional, right? Like, for an example, now if you're making a siphon and if you want to fill water inside, gooseneck kettle is going to be very useful. You can't use this, right? Because the siphons got a very tiny entry point, alright? So you need a gooseneck kettle by which the stream of water goes through directly. Similarly, to maneuver your AeroPress, because AeroPress also is like has got this radius or diameter, and to put water constantly, consistently, evenly, you do need a gooseneck kettle. The initial days of your brewing life or brewing career, you probably would not require, or you would not find gooseneck kettle to be really important, because when you go to build a brewing kit, you will see that the gooseneck kettle is for something around 3 grand Indian rupees or plus. All right, you won't get anything below that. The better ones are for around, which are like electric gooseneck kettles, where you can regulate the temperature, you can stabilize that kettle at the same temperature. They come for around 12-13 grand Indian rupees, INR, 12,000 rupees. So it is a huge investment, but can you do it without that in a cafe setup? Can you do it without that in a championship setup? Can you do it without that in a very good coffee needing homebrewing setup? Absolutely no. It has become, it's almost like, can you make an AeroPress without an AeroPress? You can't. Can you weigh coffee without a weighing scale? Not really. Can you pour water without a gooseneck kettle? I doubt. So it is a very, very important and integral part of a brewing kit. And this was realized by the company makers, and they just said, why don't we make it aesthetically? So that is how it is, I would say. It's functionality first and then aesthetics about it. So it's not that, okay, it's a beautiful looking kettle, let's just imbibe this in the brewing culture. It's not about that. So think about it. Everybody's been using a brewing kettle for a long time, whoever is brewing coffee. You know, like, it's so amazing to hold that kettle and like start pouring, and you can stop exactly the way you want to. You can increase the speed, you can increase the flow of the water, and you know, you can control that. So think about it, and it makes me realize that it is so important to have it in your brewing kit.